Good afternoon to you. 5:07 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. UCLA Medical School was once one of the top medical schools in the entire planet, but it is rapidly falling. And people who work at the medical school say that's because the way they are admitting students now prioritizes race over merit. For more on this, the reporter who broke this story today joins us now. Aaron Sibarium is with the Washington Free Beacon. Always so great to talk to Aaron, and we do it so frequently because he breaks so many important stories. Aaron, good to have you back with us, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Give us the top lines on this story on UCLA. What should we know?
Yeah, so a number of UCLA admissions officers came forward anonymously to say that the school is admitting medical students based in large part on their race and dramatically lowering standards for minority applicants, which has contributed to a massive rise in the number of students failing standardized board exams that are supposed to measure very basic medical knowledge and are not difficult to pass at all. The failure rate nationally for all of these exams is only 5%. At UCLA, in certain cohorts, it's as high as 50% on certain exams. And basically, since a new admissions dean took over at UCLA in 2020, you've seen a dramatic rise, in some cases by tenfold, in the number of students failing those tests. And of course, that data tracks with the subjective impressions of faculty who say that their students can't identify major arteries in the operating room and things like that.
So if upwards of half your class can't keep pace with the coursework, that has a detrimental effect on the rest of the class too, right? So the kids who are there who did qualify, who do have the merit to be there, they've got to wait for their classmates to catch up in order for the course material to move forward, don't they?
Yes, and I didn't mention this in the piece, but I heard from people off the record that that's exactly what is happening. Basically, you have a very wide spread of ability now. So some kids are very qualified, but other kids are really not qualified. So there's no real way to teach to the entire class because some people just need so much more extra help than others.
All right, so one of the features of this is a state school, UCLA. One of the features of California's state constitution is that they're not supposed to do any kind of discrimination on the basis of race. How are admissions officers discriminating, again, on the basis of race in light of that?
So the way it normally works is that they won't say race explicitly, but when certain candidates come up, you can tell based on their zip codes and personal statements that they're probably an underrepresented minority. And then for those students, anytime their low credentials get brought up, there's this deflection of, oh, well, but, they'll probably make it to the second year of medical school, so it's fine. And we shouldn't be worried about the scores because they've overcome so much disadvantage, right? They may not say race, but that's what's going on. And for, white and Asian applicants, they are not lowering standards in the same way. That's how it usually works. There are a few cases in which this dean of admissions, Jennifer Lucero, according to my sources, did actually mention race explicitly. For example, when one admissions officer said, hey, this minority candidate with low scores, I'm not really sure he or she's going to do very well here. The Lucero, the dean of admissions, attacked this person and said, don't you know that African-American women are dying at record high rates? Her scores don't matter. We need people like this in the medical school. So race did occasionally get brought up in this very aggressive context.
Well, the logic
down dissenters.
Sure. So the logic of a claim like that is what we need is better doctors who can attend to the needs of African-American women who are dying at higher rates, right? But the way she interpreted this is we need doctors who share the skin color of their patients. She should not be in a position of any authority, should she?
Well, I mean, assuming that all is as reported, I mean, she effectively broke the law of California, so that alone should
Yeah.
probably result in some sanction.
But in terms
Yeah,
of the school, the way the medical school views this, and the reason people are coming forward to you, to the Washington Free Beacon, is because they're concerned in particular about the role that this woman, the dean of admissions, is
yeah.
playing in distorting this school. Is that right?
Yes, and I am genuinely unaware. It may have happened before, but I'm not aware of any other case where this many admissions officers have provided such candid and detailed accounts of behind the scenes meetings and said that standards are being nuked. I mean, that is an extraordinary thing for even one admissions officer to tell a journalist, much less upwards of four.
Well, yeah.
But
Especially
they're
from
doing that.
UCLA, to be honest with you. One of the most shocking features here is that UCLA, you'd think of as kind of a left-wing place, telling the conservative Washington Free Beacon that this is such a disaster and we need to tell Aaron Sibarium.
Yeah, and look, I mean, a lot of these guys on the phone, would stress to me, like, I mean, I don't think any of them are Republicans, right? I think plenty are probably pretty left wing on a lot of issues, but they're just so appalled
Can
by what's been happening.
can I don't mean to in any way impugn your reporting because I think you're a great reporter, and my guess is that you're the one reason that so much of this is being dug up at all. But my impression is that did any of these guys attempt to approach outlets that were friendlier to them, perhaps? Like, did any of these guys try and go to the New York Times? Did you hear any backstories about their efforts to get this story out there, or was this just conversations with you, and that's where it started and ended?
I haven't heard about any efforts to go to the New York Times. I would expect that they maybe intuited that the New York Times might not want to hear this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I do think it is sort of telling where it's appearing, right?
Yes.
Given how explosive it is.
I
Yeah.
think it's totally fascinating, but I think you're right. I mean, if they're smart enough, they'll know the Times isn't interested in this. But I know Aaron Sibarium is. You've got a body of work that suggests that you take these things seriously and you handle them well. You write in your report today that is it Jennifer Lucero? Is that her name?
Yes.
Jennifer Lucero. She arrives in 2020, and UCLA has, as a result, dropped from 6th to 18th place in U.S. News and World Report's rankings for medical research. They're in free fall right now. Do you get the impression that the people at UCLA think it's only going to get worse?
I mean, I think these admissions officers are concerned about that. Yes. The other thing that's going on here is that they made all these changes to their first-year curriculum, their first really 2-year curriculum, including adding a bunch of social justice stuff to it that takes time out of the normal science stuff. And so, if you admit kids who maybe have weaker academic backgrounds, and then on top of that, you don't give them, or even the stronger kids, as much time to learn the basics, it's not that surprising, right, that people are going to struggle. It's probably not just admissions. There's other things going on, but those other things are not themselves particularly flattering to UCLA either.
You write about a situation where a Native American applicant was rejected in 2021, and Jennifer Lucero apparently put the admissions team through struggle sessions of some kind. What happened there?
What I was told, and I honestly don't know much more about it than this because it's so bizarre, is that she invited her own sister. Lucero invited her own sister to give a 2-hour talk to the entire admissions committee on Native American history. And the context was that I think they got a talking to by Lucero before this that, we didn't admit this Native American person. That's a problem. And it was very, so again, it was bringing up the race or ethnicity of the applicant. That was one case where, it wasn't just a euphemism like disadvantaged or something. It sounds like it was pretty clear that this was about wanting more Native American students.
And the Native American applicant was rejected, I would assume, on the basis of merit. In other words, they weren't qualified to be admitted to the UCLA Medical School.
I don't know, but I would assume so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But in other words, like they weren't like, oh, it's a Native American. Don't let that person in. I don't think that's why
right,
these people came.
No. I mean, I don't think no one's saying stuff like that.
That's wild. So what is UCLA saying about all of this?
They haven't said anything. I asked them for comment. I gave them all the slides and data and stuff I was planning to publish, and it was like, is this true? Do you have any comment on this? They haven't responded at all. I haven't seen them release any statement about it publicly yet. If there's mitigating information, I'd love to know that. But I asked, and they had plenty of time to give it to me, and they didn't give it to me.
And doctors broadly are concerned about this. I've heard from medical professionals who are concerned about what's happening to medical schools right now. How big do you think this problem is, and is it limited to UCLA?
It's definitely not limited to UCLA, and I've heard anecdotal stories from doctors at all sorts of institutions. I will say I think it may be especially severe at UCLA, and part of the way you know that is not just the scores on standardized tests. It's that at UCLA Medical School, between like 2018 and 2023, the percentage of Asian matriculants just plummets by almost like 50%. And that didn't happen at any other elite medical school in California or I think even elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So it does look like at UCLA there was a very, very concerted, dramatic effort to racially engineer the class that probably hasn't occurred on quite the same scale elsewhere. Yes. But look, yeah, of course, it's a problem everywhere else.
And did you find, or are you hearing reports of any kind of ensuing grade inflation or just going easy on people who screw things up in medical school as a result?
I have heard. Yeah, I mean, obviously, to do a full accounting of that would almost take a whole other piece. But yes. I was told that yes, in practice, they cut corners to try to get people through. It's partly about making tests easier. It's partly, I think, about giving people more chances to fail things before they're put on probation or kicked out. There's all sorts of kind of bureaucratic manipulations they can perform that will prevent people from dropping out. And the result is that even if kids are passing on paper, they may not be particularly qualified.
All right. Aaron Sibarium over at the Washington Free Beacon with another great exclusive report today, one that's got so many people talking, and rightfully so. Thank you, Aaron. Great to talk to you as always, sir, and great reporting. Todd may have put it down. Todd just called in, too, so he wasn't waiting that long. Todd, you there?
Hey, how are you, Ben?
Hey, there you are.
Vince, I'm here. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Good to chat with you again.
Yes, sir.
Good conversation. I was just saying that, in China, the folks that go through the medical system have to do a significant amount of research first before they go through medical school. We don't require that here. And, this conversation, really gets to the entire overhaul we need with how we approach education in our medical, education area. Because you can just see where we're going to be, 10 years from now compared to China and India and whatnot, with the way we just take DEI and put people into these programs with no merit, and the quality of our medical people are going to go to the wayside.
Yes, and it's in some sense it's of course self-sabotage. We're doing this to our own country, and so as a result, we're gonna be set back by that. But the other piece here, Todd, I'm glad you brought up China. One of the things about what China enjoys doing is actually sowing this very discord in the United States. I mean, this whole, whether it's on TikTok or through other means, they love when we are paralyzed by this racial stupidity at the expense of merit, right? So,
exactly right.
So the idea here is like they're able to get ahead of us just by forcing us to fight amongst ourselves about something that is so destructive.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I mean, I've got friends in the Chinese community that tell me, they're just laughing all the way with everything that this country is going through now with all of our cultural disarray. Good talking to you.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks a bunch for taking my call.
Of course. Yeah, Todd's call reminds me on this issue of China and the fact that they have our number on these issues. Remember at the beginning of the Biden administration, I think it was right about in the beginning, when Tony Blinken met with those Chinese officials, Secretary of State, And he was apparently raising human rights concerns. We have all these human rights concerns about the Uyghurs and what you're doing there in China. We want you to know. And the Chinese were like, oh, yeah? Black Lives Matter. Remember this? They sat down. They were like, yeah, okay. You're killing black people. Don't lecture us about anything. Human rights violations, that's your thing. That's what you're doing. So all they had to do was mouth the lyrics of the American left, and Blinken was left blubbering. He had nothing. He was like, and that was it. That was it. So China, this is their whole thing. They love this stuff. They love. I would venture a guess. I can't be certain. I guess there's probably some obvious sources of money here. The Bidens received Chinese money, so there's an obvious source of money. But beyond that, sort of like all of the vehicles for this stuff, like that Ibram Kendi character who I mentioned earlier. How much money does he make from China? Like, how much money is laundered from China to that guy? You know what I mean? I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than zero. Not at all. Yeah, this insanity. It's far-reaching. In fact, it's not just the medical community, also in the legal community. Have you seen the judicial nominees that Joe Biden's been putting forward? They're a real doozy. The Senate keeps on confirming them for some reason. Why is that? They're screwing up the country, including a woman who yesterday, well, she hasn't been confirmed yet, but she was going for a confirmation hearing yesterday before the Senate, and she's got some very stupid ideas about what to do with male prisoners who are repeatedly sexually assaulting people. Ted Cruz confronted her about this. I'll play that audio coming up. It's just amazing. Stay with us here on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey there. Good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. President Trump is gearing up for a rally right now in the Bronx. We're already seeing reports of tens of thousands of people going to see him in the Bronx. This follows a couple weeks ago. Remember, he had a rally on the Jersey Shore, over 100,000 people in attendance. The man can draw a crowd. This is not a Biden event. Biden events, have you seen some of these? They have like video footage. Like you could hear a pin drop for real, I think. Like literally, if I walked in there, we should do this. We should get into a Biden rally and drop a pin and see if you could hear it. I think we could. From some distance away, you'd be able to hear the pin drop. I saw a video the other day of a guy like 30 minutes before the rally. Did you see this video, Corey? Yeah, 30 minutes before a Biden rally, he pans the room. There's more furniture than there is people in the room, and they pan through this little auditorium, and he points the camera at his face and he goes, I think he's a reporter. He's like, well, 30 minutes to go until Biden gets here. You could feel the cringe from thousands of miles away, the lack of enthusiasm for a Biden event. Meanwhile, Trump set to go in the Bronx. AOC is angry about it. In fact, she was rooting on the weather this morning. Apparently, it was raining this morning there. It was a little muddy out, and she was like, "Yeah." She expressed something on Twitter like, like that this was God's doing. God's trying to stop Trump. I was like, do you hear yourself? Rooting against voters. She's angry. She was praying to the weather itself that it would stop turnout for her political opponent. Rooting against people choosing a different path than the one that AOC, Agent of Chaos, has brought us on. So there they go. Lots of people showing up, including, what's the name of this rapper guy that everyone's excited about? Chef something? Chef G? Is that his name? I said Andrew Gruel? No, that's not what they're talking about. Chef G. He's got over 1 million followers on Instagram. Apparently, popular guy. The kids who are there, and yes, there are young people in the Bronx right now awaiting President Trump. They were all very excited, and he looked serious. This Chef G character, he was surrounded. He had like a security guy. You could tell it was a security guy walking with him because he had a coiled earpiece. He was a big dude. He had a coiled earpiece like he was Secret Service. He was helping this. Let's clear a path. We got a rapper coming through. He apparently wants to see Trump while he's in the Bronx. So Trump's bringing them all out, all types. And it's funny, I did click into his Instagram. I was like, let's see, what is this guy all about? And there's like these two girls with these giant rear ends, like they're both like bouncing on the Instagram. I was like, well, it's true. President Trump does cast a very wide net. There's no question. It's really something. Really, something is going on in America right now. If anything interesting happens in the Bronx, which I can assure you it will, we'll bring you some of the updates tomorrow here on the Vince Coglianese Show. President Trump not expected to speak until the next hour. That'll be interesting. Yesterday, Senator Ted Cruz got a chance to question one of Joe Biden's judicial nominees, a woman called Sarah Netburn. She's a U.S. magistrate judge. She's been nominated to join the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. And Ted Cruz wanted to ask her about her decision-making in a case involving a serial child rapist. Awful story. Awful story. A man who decided in the course of all of his crimes to start being a woman. He wants to be called a woman now. He wants feminine pronouns, and more importantly for this story, he wants to be housed in prison with women. So a serial sex offender appealed to the court and said, please put me in jail with women. And this judge, Sarah Netburn, obliged. Said, sure, I'll put you in jail with women. Listen to Ted Cruz just rip her limb from limb yesterday.
In your court, what matters more? The rights of individuals or your political ideology?
I apply the law to the facts.
I asked a question, which matters more?
Well, my political ideology doesn't matter at all.
Okay, so I don't believe you. And I think this case demonstrates that you are willing to subjugate the rights of individuals to satisfy your political ideology. This case involves a male defendant who raped a 9-year-old boy. Was he guilty of that?
Yes, the petitioner pled guilty to that.
Okay, so he raped a 9-year-old boy. He also raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
He pled guilty. The petitioner pled guilty to that crime as well.
So was he guilty?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
He was a he when he did this.
That's correct.
Can you hear this? Can you hear how demented this ideology is? She said she's like trying to correct Ted Cruz now, who's correctly describing everything. She's lying under oath, right? She's lying to Congress. She said this is a female defendant. It's not. This is a male criminal.
And also criminal deviant conduct, which the record doesn't disclose what that was exactly. Then, after serving in prison, Mr. McClain was released for parole, but then violated the terms.
By the way, which is good for Ted Cruz here. A couple years ago, I think Republicans were falling for it. They were doing the lady thing, Ms. So-and-so or whatever. Not doing that now. And so keep up the pressure on these guys so that they speak correctly.
Of parole by having internet and was sent back to prison. 1 year after being released again, he was convicted of having child pornography. Is that correct?
I'm unclear on exactly the time frame that you're at, but the petitioner was convicted of distributing child pornography.
Child pornography that was images of adults violently raping children.
Abhorrent conduct.
Okay.
For which there are real victims.
And this individual, 6'2", biologically a man. A minute ago, you said that when this man decided that he was a she, you said this individual was, quote, I wrote it down, sober and entirely a female. That phrase struck me as remarkable. Did this individual have male genitalia?
I think what I said, or at least what
that is a verbatim quote, entirely a female.
Which is also, once again, lying under oath to Congress.
Sorry, what I meant to say was hormonally a female.
Okay, but that's not entirely. Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
By the way, there's no such thing as being hormonally a female. Even that is a lie before Congress. There's no such thing. High levels of estrogen artificially pumped into this guy? Okay, but that doesn't mean you're hormonally a female. That is senseless.
So you took a 6'2" serial rapist, serial child rapist with male genitalia, and he said, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me. Let me ask you something. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Is that a question you're
Yes,
asking me?
the other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Of course.
Do they have the right not to have a 6'2" man who is a repeat serial rapist put in as their cellmate?
Senator Cruz, I considered the facts presented to me, and I reached a decision
I asked
based
you a
on what
question.
the law
I asked
is.
you a question. Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so. You didn't think so. And in fact, I'm going to give some quotes from your order because Senator Kennedy is right. This is not a judge's order. This is a political activist. By the way, the beginning of your order says, at birth, people are typically assigned a gender. I got to say that would astonish a lot of Americans. A lot of Americans think you go to the hospital, a baby is born, and congratulations, you have a little boy, a little girl. The assigned a gender, I know you went to Brown, but it sounds like it's in a college faculty lounge with no bearing on reality. The Bureau of Prison argued.
It's such Marxist nonsense. It's literally truth itself is up for debate. Assigned at birth. Well, that will come as a surprise to all those parents who do gender reveal parties. No, not yet. Wait until the kid's born, and then we'll assign it.
What I'm saying right now, that if you put this person in a female prison, there will be a risk of sexual assault to the women. And you know what you did? You said you didn't care about the women. I'm going to quote what you wrote. You wrote, quote, "The Bureau of Prisons claim penological interest in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. This interest is legitimate," that's kind of you to say, "but there are no signs that petitioner is at risk of reoffending.
What?
The record is devoid of evidence of incidents of violence or assault during petitioner's incarceration when she was the perpetrator, only the victim."
So whenever the guy is in public, he's a rapist. But once he's behind bars, he's always good. He's totally fine.
Theoretical risk of sexual assault by the prisoner without more cannot support the BOP's position. No evidence, theoretical. Have you dealt... In what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at a risk of reoffending?
Senator, as I do in every case.
I know you've been told to repeat the line, "I follow the law." I asked a question. In what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at risk of reoffending?
Sir, I looked at the facts that were before me in this case. All of the evidence, including the statements of every warden who had supervised this petitioner.
You also wrote, the BOP also posits that permitting petitioner to live among women.
So listen, okay, let's just think about the logic of this. So prior to this occasion, this guy had been in male prisons. He'd been where he should be, with men. And so what the judge is saying is, in the prisons with men, he wasn't raping the men. So therefore, he's perfectly acceptable to send to a women's prison. That's the logic that she's trying to lay out before you.
Women will be traumatizing and possibly dangerous to them. This concern is overblown. I have to say, if I were the father of one of those women, and you decided that my daughter's cellmate was going to be a 6'2" man who over and over and over again committed violent sexual assault.
Yeah.
I would say the entire justice system is absurd, and it is clear on your record your political ideology matters a heck of a lot more than the rights of those women that you endangered. I think you're a radical, and I think you have no business being a judge.
Well, good for Ted Cruz. And by the way, more of these hearings should sound like that. Just go after the records, and really, when you got these guys dead to rights, preach. And here's some of the facts. You want some numbers on this? There's an organization, we should have them on at some point. Keep Prisons Single Sex USA is an organization that is advocating for people to be put in the proper spot when they're in prison. Men with men, women with women. According to Keep Prisons Single USA, there are approximately 1,980 transgender offenders in the federal system right now. Nearly 2,000 of them. That's the federal system. We're not talking state prisons, federal. Of which... nearly 1,300 are trans-identified males, so biological males, who say that they're transgender. I'm quoting, by the way, from a website called Redux. It's a feminist news website. It's amazing the lengths to which we have to go to get the data here. Of those men, almost 50% of them are in custody for sex offenses. That's compared to just 12% of the general federal inmate population. So for all the men who say that they're transgender, half of those inmates are sex offenders. Half of them are sex offenders, compared to just 12% of the general population, meaning that trans-identified males, biological males, are incarcerated for sex offenses at a rate of almost 4 times that of non-transgender inmates. Between 2022 and 2023, there was an almost 23% increase of federal inmates who now identify as transgender. In other words, it's exploding. This effort to be like, and that's just in the last 2 years. You've seen an explosion in people in federal prison claiming, oh, actually, I'm transgender. And, of course, what that means, with almost all of them are actual biological males, what they're really trying to do is say, put me in women's prison. Put me in women's prison. I'd rather be there. And people like this judge, Sarah Netburn, are saying, oh, okay. Yeah, for sure. So when Ted Cruz started his questioning, he asked her whether or not her political ideology outpaced her concern for the law. And she was like, no, I follow the law. Bullcrap. By the end of it, it is crystal clear. In fact, we didn't need to get to the end of it for it to be crystal clear. Right away, it's crystal clear that she's nothing but another one of these Marxist chaos merchants. And Joe Biden, of course, nominated her to an important federal judgeship. He's gotten some 200 of these crazy nominees through the Senate. I hope this one gets stopped. Did you see the left freaking out today that Trump said that he's going to get that Wall Street Journal reporter who's captured in Russia free the second he's elected? He said it won't even take getting into office. They're just going to give him up, get him back in America, and it'll be free. We won't have to do anything else. The left is so angry at him for saying this today. How dare you? We'll see. We'll see what happens. Meanwhile, the left getting more and more desperate about Biden's polling numbers. Here's Congressman Dan Goldman on MSNBC this morning.
And there's no question that Donald Trump has visions, as we saw from his video with the unified Reich, which was a completely knowing and intentional inclusion in that video. Let's be real here. He is paving the way to
Goldman is lying to you, by the way.
Become a Vladimir Putin or to become an Adolf Hitler or a Kim Jong-un. That's what he wants to be. And all of this is in the lead up to paving the way for him to win this election and then to take over this country and literally to eliminate the democracy that we know.
What an idiot. And, you know, remember, Trump was president before. I love how they never cite that. Or he was president of the United States. He left. He'd like to be president again. He's trying to use the election to get there. But you know, of course, he's Hitler. Say the fascists. All right, and then over on The View, the women of The View are getting so desperate about Biden's chances, they're literally begging a false god to endorse Biden.
This book is all about having real conversations. Let's get to it. Mm-hmm. Let's get real. Now, you have a massive platform.
They're talking to a guy who calls himself Charlamagne Tha God.
Reaching millions of listeners, and you and I have talked about this before. You endorsed Joe Biden back in 2020. But this time around, you say you're not going to endorse anybody. Charlamagne, now is not the time, in my opinion, to sit this one out.
Yeah. I didn't say that. I never said I was sitting it out.
What you going to do?
I'm definitely voting in November, but what I like to focus on is issues, not individuals. Like, you know, when
why not endorse?
Huh?
Why not endorse Biden?
Because if I'm sitting here telling my listeners that, you know, you have somebody out there who is a threat to democracy, you have somebody out there who said they want to, you know, suspend the Constitution to overthrow the results of an election. You saw this person, you know, try to lead an attempted coup of this country, and I'm telling people that this guy is a threat to democracy. Have you ever read Project 25? There's only 2 candidates out there. So if I'm saying that about this individual, the choice is clear, right? And I've seen y'all do this on The View before.
Mindless clapping.
I saw y'all do this to Killer Mike when he was on The View, and Killer Mike literally sat here and said, hey, you know, I supported Keisha Lance Bottoms. I supported Ralph Warnock. I supported John Ossoff, right, in Georgia. And he said, you should support the people that I've supported. You should support the person who the people I've supported are supporting.
Okay.
That's y'all opportunity to say, well,
All right, just mindless conversation. They keep begging him. They're like, please, just say it. Just please say it. My favorite thing about it is, who cares? Like, if he endorses Biden, it's not going to change a damn thing. These people have such high views of themselves. It's typical. You know who we do care about, though? The great one, Mark Levin. He's up next right here on WMAL.